when you shake your hands. That's a state of autonomic distress. Okay, so the concept of what? Cold hands, warm heart. I'm like, well, that's crazy because we know about the autonomic nervous system. I'm saying behind the scenes. I'm like, no, it's cold hands, cold heart, cold brain. This person is 1/4 alive.
How many of you guys have heard episodes on breathing, proper breathing, airway, all of those different things? Well, I know there's a lot out there, but I can guarantee that you've probably never heard breathing in what this episode is going to talk about today. I'm Dr. Rachel. This is the Unfiltered Healing Podcast. Welcome back to this episode that is going to be pretty life-changing for a lot of people, learning about the impact of breathing from a different lens. And I mean, this really impacts so many different systems of the body, but we're really talking about breathing today. And our guest is none other than Lois Laynee. No, she is not Superman's girlfriend, but she is a superwoman in her own regards. And she's done so many different things, in creating her own restorative breathing method, to heading up in Arizona as a CEO of a sleep apnea center. She's a teacher, educator, and she's written an Amazon bestseller, winning at the game of health. So loads of information in this episode. We talk about various different things, all in respect to the cranial nerves and the brain and the nervous system, and how many approach breathing and things of that nature in a wrong way, when you also have to look at shock of the nervous system, whether someone's had shock like choking or drowning or something to that nature, where their nervous system is switched and these cranial nerves are not working properly. So it doesn't matter how wide their palate is and how mechanically open they are, their nerves and their brain are not connecting to breathe properly. And this can have so many other systemic effects on the body, but we just kind of scratched the surface in this video. We give lots of information, and I know that there is other information out there on cranial nerves, vagus nerve stimulation, all of those different types of things. But this talks about it in a different lens, because it's actually not about just stimulating the vagus nerve. It's about all of the cranial nerves and their integration together, and how that works in combination with the brainstem and with the rest of your body. So without further ado, I just want to jump into today's episode, but please like, share, comment, follow us. We don't get paid for doing these episodes. It is solely to bless you and others. So please make sure you do all of those things so that more people can get exposed to this information. They can get information on how to work with people like Lois and really overcome challenges in their health and in their brain function and in their life. So make sure you do that and enjoy the episode. All right. Well, Lois, welcome to the Unfiltered Healing Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I like the word unfiltered, because isn't that just the fun part of life?
Yes, it's very much needed in many different facets. And so we love bringing guests on like yourself that we can talk about different subjects that people aren't talking about. That's the whole point, is to expose people to different types of providers and information so that they can be empowered about, health and healing. And so I'm so grateful to have met you last month at the event that we were at. And I'm really excited for our conversation today and, how it's going to impact those who listen to it. I think it's going to be a really big deal for people. And so thank you for taking time out of your morning to do this with us.
My pleasure.
Now, before we kind of dive into the topics that we're going to be talking about today, for those listening who may not have heard of you, the original Lois Laynee, would you mind sharing a little bit about who it is that you are and, how you've kind of evolved into what it is that you do now?
Oh, that's awesome. The fun part is I am who I am since I was 3 years old. So my beginning into my career really started when the birth of my puppies and just
Mm,
watching the different processes, one struggling, one not struggling, and one not able to take its first breath. So
yeah.
I was determined to go in there and help the struggling one. And in my bathroom, where my dog was having puppies, I had two pieces of equipment: an empty toilet paper roll and a Q tip. So off I went to wake it up. Then, when it didn't happen, I looked around, I saw a cotton ball, and then I had a washcloth. So, without those pieces of equipment, I
Mm,
physically imitated and followed the sequence of what my dog was doing for her puppies. So the strong puppy I watched, and I noticed that if I did it a couple times to the little puppy who was struggling, it didn't change. But if I did it 5 to 10 times, it did change.
mm,
So I
mhm,
learned perseverance. I learned what was going on, and I didn't have to make sense of it. Really, I learned to follow. And
yeah.
that's really what nature does, right? That if the colt doesn't follow the mare, then things aren't going to happen naturally for a natural life. There is that immaturity follows maturity from loving compassion, but yet it's on a path. So, you know, humans need to intervene when nature doesn't have something for a reason.
Mhm,
If the colt can't stand up for a while, yeah, you come in and assist, but you work with when the mare and the colt are ready for you to assist. How you come
mhm,
into the environment does matter. If I come
mhm,
in authoritative top down, nature doesn't get to work. But if I come in gently at the same height and support, nature can take over. So from there, I started my first business at 4. I had a notebook. I had the table and chairs that my brother and sister had used to play house. Oh no, I was in business. From there, I measured puppies, I weighed puppies, I walked how they think. I looked at the strong puppy, had a gait. Well, the other puppy didn't quite have a gait. If the poor little puppy, his name was Coco, he was so little. And when he would get tired, he'd just fall over. You know, I'm like,
mm,
"Is
mhm.
that normal? Dogs don't just
Yeah.
fall over, they gotta walk." He would sometimes forget how to come up the stairs, and you'd have to go down and push him because he couldn't figure out how to get up the first step on his own. After he
Mhm,
got up the first step, well, he could continue, but it was that inertia. And so, I was very curious. I was bothersome to my mother because I was the only one at home. My brother and sister were at school, and she, had taught me to read. And so she would like, Lois, just go read the encyclopedia. I'm like, okay, off I went because I had plenty of time, I had nothing else to do, you know? And so there I went. I started reading and I was enthralled with the layers of the body. Oh, that
mm,
was just so
mhm,
exciting to me because I could understand it easily. So I understood the muscles. Oh, I was so excited. And the bones. Oh, I was so excited. The organs, but then came to the nerves. And oh, I was just thrilled. So I read about it all, learned about it all. Then every year we had puppies and I was on puppy watch. And, all my puppies were strong after that. I'm sure it had nothing to do with me, but I was ready. So many other factors in life, but I was so proud of my puppies. And, one of my nicknames was Queen of the Dogs because Lois was there. It was my domain. I knew what to do. And there we go. So, did it call me? Did I call it? Who knows? But that's the beginning. And then off I went to school. And when there was a problem, somebody fell down. I was there because I was observing. So, I was taught to
yeah,
be very observant.
mhm,
And then you start watching because like any good mom, you pay attention to your ears. So what did I learn? I learned breathing sounds, and I could
Mm.
tell what was going on by breathing sounds. So as soon as any type of mammal was, because of course, I took care of every mammal in the world, the bunnies, cat, you name it. Lois had a plethora of lots of little different animals. And from there, you could tell the breathing sounds what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds of my grandfather. Everybody who came over to visit at family reunions, we had a large family, and it was just so interesting how everybody would eat different, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So
Yeah.
then it comes to my little brother is born, and I'm 13 or 14 in there. And oh, I was ready because now I had my first human. And off we went. Well, I babysat before then, but first, and oh, that was the first thing in there, and he would have a little problem sleeping. So now it's like, well, my puppies never had problems sleeping. So sleep was very enthralling. So of course I do different things, and of course my mother was exhausted because she was 40, and off we went. So I would take the little angel and try different things on him, and sure enough, I became a very popular babysitter because I could get babies to sleep. Little did they
Mm.
know I really wanted to watch TV. So as soon as I got that little angel asleep, I got to watch TV until they came home. Like no one got to tell me what show I got to watch. And everything has different stuff. So I went from there because in my thing, in my original when I was 3 is I didn't want things to die. So,
Yeah.
I loved Marcus Welby because I loved to figure out what was wrong, a lot because I had that detective engineering brain. And oh no, one of his patients died. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to be a doctor. There's no way I want anybody to die on my watch. So when I don't remember what age, my dad came home. He goes, Lois, I have it all figured out. And I'm like, okay. He goes, you're going to be a dental nurse because they don't die at the dentist. And I'm like, good. We just don't want to die, you know? So from there, I went into dental hygiene, but I was always like the MacGyver. So with the little kid came in, this and
Mhm.
this and this. And then from dentistry, I went into craniofacial cleft palate team. Okay. So if you're ready, because
Wow.
to me, it was just mechanics and nerves and muscles, no worries. Because I was
Mm-hmm.
never inundated with something was a limiting thing. Okay.
Sure.
So if you walk into the arena that somebody isn't broken, but they're limitless, I
Yeah.
know something, but I don't know everything. Work
Mm-hmm.
from the MacGyver point of view because whatever's around, something's going to help you. In
Mm-hmm.
that concept, I got connected to how to go in there and work on brains. And I'm like, oh, let me show you how we can put our hands, and then the head floats, and then the baby goes to sleep, and you get to watch TV. So let me show you a couple things. So one of the retired professors he goes, oh, you're doing osteopathy? I'm like, nope, it's called floating. We're just going to float the system. He's trying to tell me, no, 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 Lois, you fit over here. And I'm like, no, 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 I fit over here.
Camp boxer.
Exactly. Come on, there's this whole universe. So, oh, it was just so fun, and
uh,
in growing up in St. Louis, it was a region of, I would call it integration. Now, there were
mhm.
universities that were very dogmatic, and if
Sure.
you came outside of the box, they would ban you for life and burn your books. So, it wasn't all happy. However,
Yeah.
dentistry included chiropractic and osteopath, and believe it or not, veterinarians. Why?
Wow.
Because everybody knew something, and we had a different
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint, and the other viewpoint would spark more synergy with the other team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we know that now, right? You try something one, it's not 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's the pathway to get to 99.
Sure.
And that's
Mm.
collaboration. It's really everybody bringing it to the table from this is my lens. I look through it for yellow. So from there, balloon up the nose. I'm like, no worry. I've been sticking Q-tips up puppies' noses. I've been putting Q-tips up baby noses. No worries. Let me show you what I can do with the Q-tip. And from there, then we went to Arizona. In Arizona, back then it was
Mm.
amazing. All we had to do was register ourselves as a fascial therapist. And a fascial
Okay.
therapist meant we were going to touch you with consent, but you had to have your clothes on. Well, thank goodness, because nobody at the dentist is going to come take their clothes off. So I was fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Function duties in Arizona, so I learned anesthesia. Well, it's quite a complex thing because you have to learn all the chemical reactions and the chemical reactions, with what medications the person's on. And then we had to use all about gases because we use nitrous. Well, nitrous, we have to monitor CO2. Back then, it was
Yeah.
very regimented, very brutal, and because
Mm.
a person's life depended on it. Well, no worries. Lois and the life depending on it. Oh, I wasn't going to mess up. So they told me I needed to do everything. My dad's a chemical engineer, brilliant mind, knows how to solve all
Mm.
this stuff. And he's like, Lois, you have to do this and this. But just remember, if there's mercury in the mouse stage, you're going to have a battery. And if you're going to have a battery, you're going to have all these differences. And I'm like, okay. So, in my dad's house, you cannot throw a battery away unless you take it and measure it. Because if it's good, then we have to understand polarity, blah, 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 blah. So ever since a kid, I've been measuring everything I could, with my
Sure.
battery tester because I have my own battery tester. Oh, see what I was in business with? My table and chairs, my battery tester. So these concepts
Yeah.
have always been in who I am.
Sure.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
realize electricity. Well, electricity you can't see, but you can see the product of electricity. So
Right.
when it came to Wi-Fi, I'm like, well, that's how the brain works. The brain works off Wi-Fi and the brain works off of hardwire. And
Mm.
there's a way to
Mm-hmm.
test it. And that
Mm-hmm.
testing gives you valuable information because a person can't come tell you, oh, I think circuit 17 is blown today. But then you start to watch, and as a small kid, I think I was 4 or 5, um, I saw my first drowning
Mm.
and how the life force left. Well, as a little kid, you see everything. So
Sure.
you see, which sounds really kind of crazy, but
Mm.
this is the unfiltered version. You see the spirit leave. You
Sure.
see the spirit leave the body.
Uh-huh.
Well, or,
Uh-huh.
and then I watch everybody what they're doing, but the exit plan was there and there was peace. There was peace in one level,
Mm.
but there was deep sorrow on the other level.
Mm-hmm.
And people, every man there was trying to resuscitate the girl.
Sure.
And it was just, I could see it, not sure what to do with it all, because
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen it with my puppy because my puppy came out already passed.
Mm.
Do
Mm-hmm.
you see? So I just sat there and I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. So as I went into dentistry, what's the big thing that stops dentistry? Gagging. Well, why do you gag? You gag because your brain can't figure out your airway system from your mouth system. If I touch
Mm.
a tooth, I'm not touching your throat. You should not gag. So everybody was like, oh, they would write all over the chart in red, extreme gagger. Well, in circles, the extreme gagger, there was the energy of shame, belittlement.
Sure.
Oh my God, let's get rid of them because they're a pain in the ass. Well, that's not truth. The truth is they choked on something and their nervous
Mm-hmm.
system is in a state of shock. I knew about
Mm.
the state of shock because I had a sister who survived a car accident where my grandmother passed in. And she was always in a state of shock. And you could tell she would jump when there was a loud sound. If a car would screech, you could just tell she would lose it.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, was very old, and one of his brothers was shell shocked from a war. So we all
Yeah.
knew what shock had into the body. So when I went into dentistry, of course they're shell shocked. And then some
Mm-hmm.
of the professors would say, "Well, what war do you think they've been in?" Kind of in a condescending way. I go, "The
Sure.
drowning war," because I could
Mm-hmm.
see the problems in the throat from a nerve point of view, a muscle point of view. Most people wouldn't shock sitting up, but some would. Well, what would that affect? Oh my God, it would slow me down on my x-rays. Well, this isn't going to happen because I'm used to parting the way. Moses had his thing, Lois has her thing. We got to get rid of these obstacles because we could touch the tongue and the tongue could relax and the throat open. Well, it's very visible in dentistry to see if that happens. It's very visible in dentistry to see if it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
My grade is going to depend upon my x-rays, and I have a gagger. No worries. I have a cotton ball, I have a Q-tip, and I'm not afraid to use it. And so I would do the same thing to puppies and babies, and all these people would say, "Lois, this is amazing. I don't choke anymore." And I would say, "Wonderful. Let's get these x-rays going." And, I'm on a time frame, got to get things done. And you keep going and going and going. And now
Yeah.
dentistry was easy. So I could work with kids after car accidents because people would say, well, after a car accident, they've never been the same.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a certain environment. I'm like, bring them over here. So a lot of the kids would have problems. I'm like, well, let's just do it backwards. Let's lay down on the seat, put the feet up where the headrest would go. And everyone say, you can't do that. And I go, watch me. And not only that, the kid would totally cooperate. Why? Because if the brain gets compressed in a car accident, how
Mm.
functioning gravity changes. So if you have stability for your head, you can accomplish more, namely open your throat and breathe. You have
Mm-hmm.
a different gravity force. It's
Sure.
physics, because of course my dad would come home at the end of the day and say, if I dropped a pound of feathers and I dropped a pound of leather, which or BBs or something, metal, which is going to hit the ground first? If you're driving through the road, the top of the tire is going 10 miles an hour. How fast is the bottom of the tire going? And we're like, oh
Yeah.
God, I just want to eat my chicken and green beans, Dad. Don't be asking me physics, you know? And you're so pretty soon you're like, I don't know, tell me, Dad. And of course he'd tell us and explain it and this and this. So, when you get a physics lesson every night for dinner, you never know if it's chemical, electrical, physics, all those
Right.
practical things a person needs. So when you look at that, you just look, if I change position, do I get a easier outcome? Can the person breathe? Because guess what?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about breathing. So
Mm-hmm.
I could
Mm-hmm.
take the patient back into the clinic in dental hygiene school, and I could tell by their breathing sounds, are they in shock? Is this
Mm.
going to be easy? Are they dreading it? Blah, 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 blah. And then I would have my Q-tip first and how I would touch them. And then because I knew about parts of the brain, I want to
Right.
get to the face and the mouth, I have to have the hands being friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that definition would be integrated, which is what? My hands aren't cold when you shake your hands. That's a state of autonomic distress. Okay. So the concept of what? Cold hands, warm heart. I'm like, well, that's crazy because we know about the autonomic nervous system. I'm saying behind the scenes. I'm like, no, it's cold hands, cold heart, cold brain. This person is 1/4 alive. Their autonomic
Wow.
nervous system has locked them out of their
Sure.
potential. Well, you only
Sure.
understand the concept of potential if you understand electricity and physics. Well, trust me, I had a PhD in that by the time I was 12.
Sure you did.
Oh my gosh, even to this day, my dad's 92. You never know what question he's going to ask you, and you got to get it
Right.
right. And if you don't, he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, have you been listening to me all these years?" "Yes, Dad, but I've been doing other things, you know." Any
Right.
anyway, so then when I got to Arizona, I had my fascial license or certificate, whatever it was called back then. I was ready to take on the world. Well, guess what? My first client that came in was a POW
Mm.
that had been brutalized.
Yeah.
And he taught me so many things. Well, what is he? He's a big puppy. No worries. I can handle this. So after we got him ready so he could receive dentistry and restore things, he became a different person. And his whole family was so grateful because they
Mhm.
got their family member back to pre war status.
Wow.
Well, then
Yeah.
he brought me in all of the platoon because they all retired to Arizona together to play golf.
Yeah.
So then I got exposed to, sports, and then some of them were coaches. And so, how is it is dentistry should be easy if you have
Mhm.
natural cranial nerve ability, and nobody cares about the word cranial nerves anymore
Sure.
because they've lost that connection. But if they do understand brainstem, so what people forget about brainstem is all signals go from our brainstem to the brain. So if the brain wants to talk to the body, this is the intersection it has to go through.
Mhm.
Signals from the body to the brain, it has to go through the brainstem.
Sure.
So the more organized, fluid, developed the brainstem is, now the brain and body can work in harmony or
Mhm.
balance or whatever
Mhm.
else you want. So in physiology, we have those
Mhm.
dimensions, right? We have anatomy. So if our one side of our face is different than the other, our airway could be skewed. Okay,
Sure.
so anatomy measures the mechanics of how things work. But
Mhm.
biomechanics rely on muscles. Well, muscles come from one part of the brain, but nerves that give them the energy, the charge, all this come from a different part.
Sure.
So I'm used to going things backwards. So now we call it functional neurophysiology. Okay. So that's why we learn pathways.
Mhm.
Beyond that is the application. So, what happens if this system doesn't work?
Yeah.
And that's where my work has been for the last 40 years to share. Okay, you don't smell. What does that mean? Well, if you can't smell, you're not going to breathe the same. So, if breathing is distorted, every system is robbed from natural abilities. Okay,
Mhm.
so what does that mean? Well, you're not going to sensory process very well. How many people have been labeled, oh, your sensory process is time out? Those are cranial nerves. If the cranial
Mm.
nerve system isn't integrated and adaptable in the presence of gravity,
Mm.
your heart has to make up for it. So
Sure.
that's why in a craniofacial team, you had a huge group of over 30 people looking at the person from their different perspective, and there's always the cardiologist. So back then we had Dr. Dietrich. He was the first person to do surgery on TV. He was my
Wow.
buddy because if cranial nerves are out of sync, the heart has to work harder, inefficient.
Mm.
And he would
Mhm.
always say,
Mhm.
when I'm doing a surgery, I want the best outcome. And all he had to do with the person is go to Lois, do whatever she tells you to do. When she tells you you're done, and you come back to me. So that is the
Wow.
world I've grown up in. And so now people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, cranial nerves. Oh, so you're doing cranial sacral therapy? No. Do you know what nerves are? No, they don't.
I have no idea.
I know. So I've been teaching keep your lips together, but cover your teeth. Practice
Mhm.
doing this. What is it doing? Well, I could talk 6 hours about what that's doing. The bottom line, we're
Sure.
activating nerves, we're making them work together, we're getting different lobes of the brain connected, so it's a pathway of function. But it's the
Yeah.
easiest one you can see if lips are apart. It's because your
Mhm.
brain can't feel your lips.
Mm.
Well,
Mhm.
you've had a brain injury.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
people, well, if we don't measure, we don't know. So that's why my motto is test, don't guess. We don't get in a car, not have any information about the car and go, I'm going to drive to Alaska today. Well, do you have enough gas? When's the last time? Blah. So it's common knowledge because we get information back about things, right? My
Mm.
computer goes,
Mhm.
you haven't updated in the last 6 years or whatever it says.
Mhm.
If I don't update every week or more, my camera doesn't work on my computer.
Yeah.
It won't interface. Well, your cranial nerves are the same system. If I can't breathe through my nose and move my legs at the same time, there's 17 other systems that are running at 10%. So no wonder you're
Mhm.
tired. What
Mhm.
people think is pain is the motivator. But what if your brainstem inhibits pain when all systems work?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a concept nobody hears about. And I'm like, well, but it's been around for hundreds of years. In the
Sure.
1700s, I think, is when they discovered cranial nerves. This is not
Sure.
new. The application,
Yes.
understanding is if this doesn't work, how does that affect our whole system?
Yeah.
That is what, hopefully, in my lifetime, every parent will know so that when that baby is first born and their first breath isn't on their own. Okay. Have you ever heard of the concept of being a snuba? A snuba is what? Half scuba, half snorkel, right? What does it mean? You're still connected to your air tube. You don't have to breathe on your own. So
Mm.
baby's a
Mhm.
snuba. We have that cord. We'll leave the cord connected until the cranial nerve system can get organized because it went from a what? A fish
Sure.
to dry land. So
Sure.
what if we give them 3 minutes to figure it out? Because in those 3 minutes, it won't be in a state of shock because in a state of shock is
Yeah.
mouth breathing. Aha. Okay.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
from that viewpoint, you go through a different door first. Then you got to change certain things along the way. And now we get to something else.
Yeah. This is just so complex, but so simple.
Oh, Q-tips, cotton balls, come on. Maybe a popsicle stick. You just have fun with it.
Yeah, but I really want to reiterate just some key points that you said because I know personally in my profession and what we're seeing more and more in the airway world, being in this world, is breathing and breathing through the nose and breathing adequately. And the struggle with that, if I could say that word, is what I want people to understand by part of your message today is when you talk about breathing specifically, because you can't even go 4 minutes without oxygen. It's very important. It's the most vital nutrient. But breathing, as you're talking about, incorporates so many different things. And if we just focus on the anatomy and the mechanics, like you said, which is important, we have to look at that portion of room and space and all of those things. But there's individuals that have had those things done and they're still not breathing adequately, and there's this confusion, and then there's all this information that, oh, I just have to expand my palate wider and I have to do all of these things. And so I think it's really important for people to understand what you're talking about is the neurology and the cranial nerves and the coordination and system of this together. Because, like you're talking about, people don't think about, well, have you had a shock to your nervous system? And is the brain then connecting to your tongue and to your mouth and to your nose and all of those things that you're talking about? And it has been around for a long time, but somehow we lost the
Right.
connection. That's just structure and nothing else.
Right. And what's changed in education is we were informed cranial nerves. Most physicians I talked to under the age of 75 probably
Mhm.
is you were taught the nerves, you
Mhm.
memorized what they did,
Sure.
but you were not taught how to do an exam.
Yeah.
So that one piece of how to do the exam has been skipped. So did you
Mm.
pass the
Mhm.
test? Yes. Did you perform how to do it? The answer is no. And
Sure.
it's so standardized this way that in a court of law, when somebody is testifying for a condition, you were in a car accident and now you haven't had a regain to function, and people will say, well, we've tested them by standardized testing and nothing is wrong. They
Mhm.
will even write on a report grossly cranial nerve 2 through 12 grossly intact. So now in a court of law, we say, could you show us how you examined them? And no one can.
Yeah.
So then lovingly, but not lovingly,
Mhm.
Aunt Lois says, so in other words, you falsified these medical records.
Sure.
If you didn't examine them, there is no exam. How long has that person been doing that? Let's say they're 50 years old. It's their entire career. Do you see? So everyone has practiced this, every client, every
Mm.
patient in a system because they don't have understanding.
Mhm.
Okay, they quit measuring exhalation of CO2 because of cost in a hospital. Oh, we could save money if we don't do this. Wonderful. We can even save money if we don't do it during surgery. Isn't that wonderful? So, again, a
Mm.
CPA made a
Yeah.
decision that shifted our ability to assess human being on the most essential function. Can my brain regulate breathing? So when I came
Yeah.
up with my company name, Restorative Breathing, and it's the
Mm.
Laynee Restorative Breathing Method, because it's a method of how to
Yeah.
reconnect the nervous system, people went, breathing? Ah, I guess you're going to tell my brain that I'm not breathing right, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't understand that, I'm going to be dismissive. So you different
Sure.
people, are they dismissive or are they curious? Oh, tell me more.
Mhm.
I'm not sure
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
understand. Right?
Mhm.
And again, those are different approaches. So every person, of
Mhm.
course, has the right to view things however they want. But if your brain sucks at breathing, your whole life is going to be harder. And you look at
Yeah.
people, they are struggling. A lot of people are struggling, and it's not cause and effect. You know, oh, the lights on my in my car. I go to someone, I turn the lights on.
Sure.
We don't have those signals now. Right. And looking
Yeah.
at
And I
the mechanical part, the mechanics are a result of neurology.
facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it, unfortunately, not in this aspect, but that's been a theme for a lot of medical important things that have been left out, unfortunately. And this is why people are searching for answers, And I will say in chiropractic school, we do at least learn a cranial nerve exam, which is helpful. Um, we're not necessarily taught what to do with it.
Right,
But,
right, right.
so a lot of chiropractors just don't do it because they just
No,
they don't really.
right. So isn't that wonderful though? We're taught an
Yeah,
exam, but we don't know what to do with it. So that is a challenge when I go, well, I have to teach you how to do it. And they go, well, I know how to do it. And I go, I guarantee you, you don't.
no.
Because, and even people like when you do something, you're, oh yeah, I've helped this nerve return to function. I go, show me your test. Oh, I can feel it.
Mhm,
No, you can't.
mhm, mhm.
You have to have an appropriate stimulus for a fiber, and you have to have the proper brain interpretation. Then you have to have the proper biological mechanical response,
Sure.
which is if I ring the doorbell, I should hear a bell ring. But what most people, if you hit the doorbell, the garage door goes up and down, or the
Right.
water turns on. Like, really?
Mhm,
I hit the doorbell.
mhm,
So that's what happens after a car accident, and the results are not visible. You
mhm.
must measure. So when you measure, we find anywhere from 50 to 60 things that are
Wow,
not functioning naturally.
wow.
Now, if you are in a court of law, of course, there's very exciting attorneys and they can shred you because you got a ticket when you were 16, you know. So you're not, I go,
Yeah,
I didn't create oxygen. I didn't, but
yeah.
they have to have all this figured out when they send a human to the moon, you know. So it is science, just maybe not everyday human science.
Selective.
Yes, because this coordination level was really reserved
Yeah,
for the elite athlete.
yeah.
You know?
Mhm,
So my best friend growing up, well, young here as an adult, was in
mhm.
Colorado because he's the only one that measured CO2 for his athletes. He would train him at altitude. He'd send him down to me. And again, go to Lois when she says you're done, you're done. So some people
Wow.
can get done in 3 days, some people 5 days, some people were working on them longer because
Yeah,
everything is unique. There is your blueprint of your cranial nerve system is just as unique as your fingerprint.
yeah.
And I just tell people, the one thing is like, well, what's the chances of me getting better? And this and this and this. And I go, have has anybody else given you answers?
Mhm.
If you haven't been able to sleep through the night, has anybody else given? Oh, you've been through 17 therapies and they didn't work.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanna go back for a minute. I remember you when you were talking, you specifically said a quote. I don't know, I don't remember who it was, but you said something about going back to like, trauma and choking and drowning and things of that nature, which I think a lot of people forget about or don't maybe even remember in some instances. Um, you said a quote of something like when there's a shock, like the
Right.
turbinates
Well, well,
swell.
that's the first biological response. Mhm.
Yeah,
Dr.
they
Ball, it
swell.
was Dr. Ball in 1912, 1892, something a
Right,
while
right,
back. Right, because
right.
people understood shock
Mm,
versus visible injury.
sure.
Of course, we are going to take care of your broken bone, all of your stuff that you would go to an emergency room for, and
Mhm,
then you are also treated for shock. Because shock is going to limit the autonomic nervous system from coming back. So there were
mm,
very different beliefs. One belief is the wait and see.
mhm.
Well, Aunt Lois doesn't believe in wait and see how the little puppy's going to breathe, or wait and see if my battery's going to come back to life. No, we're going to measure. Okay.
Yeah.
So the wait and see is, well, after 6 weeks, okay, however
Mm,
much they come back is how much they're going to come back.
mm. Okay.
Okay. So a lot of times, if you look at medical parameters, they have that 6 week. thing of that's a good thing of recovery. Where it came from, no one knows. It's not scientific. It's not neurological. It isn't cellular. It's not biology. We're not sure. It's the same place as, oh, you're going to lose a tooth for every baby. Really? Where does that come from? I don't know. No one knows. It's crazy. When I first started in the 70s, almost every woman believed that.
Sure.
Just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
No
Mm-hmm.
one knows. Came from somewhere.
Yeah.
But in neurology, a state of shock, the fastest we return you to function within 24 hours,
Mm.
that indicates how well you can heal.
Sure.
So in that 6 week period, we want to return you in your autonomic nervous system to function.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a disease model. It's not the medical model of now. It's
Sure.
not the model, but it was the model before. It was the model of in soldiers. Okay. What did they do? They did things that if you go back and look, cranial nerve activation,
Wow.
smelling salts. Why'd they use smelling salts? To bring
Yeah.
you back. Why?
Wake them up.
That's the power of not people think the nose. No, it's not the power of the nose. It's the power of cranial nerve number 1. Why?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go through your thalamus. Oh, really? The pathways are direct, instantaneous, and clearing emotions, clearing memories, clearing you, clearing you, clearing you. Why? You've gotten shocked out of your gourd. We
Sure.
got to clear it. We can clear it for 2.5 cents. Come on, let's go. Now, we don't want them to be cleared in the middle of a surgery. Come on.
No.
You see? So there is the sequence. That's why what happens, we have all this chronic condition. Trust me,
Yeah.
the chronicness is in your cranial nerve system.
Yeah. Because everybody's in sympathetic dominance as well.
Right,
And the
because they get
cranial.
shocked. So think about
Yeah.
shock. Shock with the sound.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what has shocked you in sound. There's always that. What has shocked you through your visual system? What
Mm.
has shocked you from like rolling, moving, head bobbing, getting hit in the head with a volleyball? Because no one thinks that's a shock. Oh, no.
Oof.
Right? Think about
Mm-hmm.
how about a tetherball when you were in 4th grade? Right? I mean, oh, well, it hit you in the face. Well, come on. Let's think this through. Where's my face? You know, you got hit in the face. Is it your face? Is it your jaw? How
Mm-hmm.
about your skull?
Mm-hmm.
Where did it go? Guess what? It went
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
this was why dentistry was so relevant, is because we got people who what? Broke teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we know what teeth are? How about crystals?
Mm-hmm.
What cuts a tooth in dentistry? Diamond burrs. Oh. So has anybody gone through life and go, oh my gosh, my diamond ring broke?
Mm-hmm.
But when a tooth breaks, nobody goes, oh, it's a tooth, it's cosmetic. No, if your tooth broke on the top, your green bone broke. Well, what's in the back of the green bone? Oh gosh, your nose, your palate,
Mm-hmm.
ah, your zygomatic arch. Oh, where
Yeah.
does it hook onto? Oh, it hooks onto my sphenoid bone. My sphenoid bone is connected to this bone, which is connected to this bone, which protects my brainstem. So if this
Yeah.
gets boggled because a crystal broke,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think happened to the jello of my brain? It's called
Yeah.
smushing.
Yeah.
And what do people say? Oh, you look fine to me.
Yes. Can't see it on the outside. Right. Yes, right. I know.
So
Um,
dentistry, you can access cranial nerves. That's why they teach you cranial nerves, because you're going to take care of what? Broken teeth.
mm-hmm.
Now, we're not talking a tooth that breaks because you bit into a muffin and the tooth
Sure,
is 80% cavity.
sure.
We're talking about trauma.
Yeah,
Anytime your tooth chips and breaks, your brain got smushed. The gelatin in your brain has an impact.
wow. I've never heard it that way.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad you asked. People are like,
I've never
so
heard.
you clean teeth? I'm like, well, not really. I saved brains. I'm
Yeah.
going to open your airway. I'm going to make sure your
Wow.
airway can open big, because here's the craziness of the anatomy.
Yeah.
Love them dearly.
Yeah.
Okay. The beginning of my mouth tube, where's the end? The other end. Gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody ever seen the resting state of the lower end? Would it be open big or would it be closed shut?
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody ever clogged a toilet going to the bathroom? And did we have that tube open to a new size and then it closed to a different size?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so neurology is state dependent, and neurology, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you do heart rate variability on somebody, which is pure science, and I don't mean the
Mhm.
gizmo you get for $69.95. That's a joke. You need
Okay.
pure data. Nobody gets to do averages. It's pure data. Pure data
Okay.
is not, I get to interpret it. No one else gets to give me an average. I don't care about averages. How high did you go? How low did you go? Let's get pure.
Okay.
When a person walks into a dental office, do you think they go into sympathetic, or do you think they're
Sure.
just this chill parasympathetic?
No.
They walk in and they smell the dental office. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
smell happens how fast? 100 million billionth of a millisecond. Okay, the
Yep.
smell is odd. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to undo all the smell if you want to have a parasympathetic office. Okay, then there's that sound. Zing, 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 zing. Oh, lovely. Everyone's going to be very calm. So in
Oh.
dentistry, when we take a cone beam, they're in a sympathetic state. Do you think the brainstem locks like their head locked in? Still, don't move. Am I
Mm-hmm.
breathing? Am I not breathing? So if you run if you run a heart rate variability, we are taking people and determining their mechanics based on no information of the nervous
Yeah.
system. Because trust me, if this is locked shut, it's because I'm under threat.
Yeah.
It's not a conscious state. I
Mm-hmm.
love my
Mm-hmm.
dentist, but don't lock my head
Mm-hmm.
in. You
Sure.
see? So, medical procedures, medical diagnostics, I just say, well, what state are you in? When everyone does research, what state are they in? Where's their
Mm-hmm.
autonomic testing? If you don't
Mm-hmm.
test, you don't know. So now we interpret, we don't know. Oh, you have a small airway. I go, of course they're guys, but more women are getting involved. So I go, have you ever had the resting state before the baby comes out? We could change up to 10 centimeters. Really? So we have tubes that change. We don't
Sure.
think in gravity. What does our air
Mm.
do?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's a different coordination of your nervous system based upon gravity. So can cranial nerve 1 work standing? Maybe not. Maybe. If you don't test, you don't know. Can cranial nerve 1 do it when you lie down? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah.
All of that matters in how the airway functions. And when we want to know each nerve that's responsible, or combination of nerves that are responsible for each zone of your airway.
Mm-hmm.
right? We all get the concept of our fuse box. My kitchen appliances aren't working. What would be your first thing to go check your fuse box for?
Yeah.
GFI switch. Now, if you just moved into your house, maybe you don't know where the little button to push to make it come on. But if you had
Right.
the drunk electrician, it's upstairs in your bathroom. Could take you a long time to get your blender for your morning coffee, heaven forbid. I know where my
Yeah.
GFI switch because my morning coffee ain't gonna not happen for me. Swedish people love their coffee.
Yes.
Right?
Uh,
Right? So you see,
yeah.
where's your GFI switch? What's not working? Go backwards, right?
Yeah.
It has to
Yeah.
be plugged into the wall has to be on the switch has to be connected, and I have to have a big enough fuse
Mm-hmm.
for the draw on this circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So what stops
Yeah.
all that? A near drowning. What stops all
Mm.
that? A choking. See, your brain looks at completion. In your
Mm-hmm.
brain's memory bank, yes, I choked and now I'm alive. Okay, check. It's not an issue.
Sure.
I wasn't injured. Yeah, you were. Your brain's in a state of shock.
Mm. There's a memory of it.
No, no, don't go there. Don't go there. Go into, I
Okay.
blew my fuse.
Okay.
My fuse, everybody goes, don't go there. Your
Okay.
brainstem loves just to have signals. Energy, no other energy. Electrical, this. It's on, it's not on. It's down. Let's say it's down to 10%. Why? Because for a moment, let's say it was 2 seconds, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
use my airway.
Got
I
it.
blew my fuse because of shock. What happened?
Got
The turbinates swell, right?
it. Yeah.
Okay. So, of course, I have a diagram of our turbinates. So, if our turbinates swell, they're going to stay that way until I push the reset.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So now when I cut them out, what's going to happen? I've lost my ability for nitric oxide. So now I'm not going to sterilize, but we've had a surgery. When in doubt, cut it out.
Sure.
Oh, test. Don't guess.
Yes. This is so profound. I've never heard a lot of these things. So I'm very excited for, even being in this profession. So I'm very excited for people to hear these things because I think it will change the paradigm of so many ways that they think about the nervous system and the health. And like you're talking about, resetting these switches. So, in these switches that you're talking about, would you briefly, because I know we only have a few minutes
Yes.
left, um, would you briefly just go through like what each, because cranial nerves, for those that don't know, they come out of the brain and they're part of what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. And so they do lots of different functions. Would you explain very briefly and very quickly what each one of those, you've already explained some of them, like smell and stuff like that. Would you maybe explain some of those so people understand what those nerves maybe do and then how they work collectively? Does that make sense? So
That's
just
right.
briefly, like, what
I
does
don't
cranial
know if
nerve
I could
one
ever
do?
do something briefly, to be honest, because they're so in depth and I can't like ignore one of them. But
I know.
here's a different analogy. Okay?
Okay.
We have distinct regions of the brainstem. So we have our midbrain, and it does
Mm-hmm.
more than just move your eyes. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It does more than that. So if our
Mm-hmm.
eye movements are altered, it affects our sleep. We're just going to make it really simple. Okay.
Okay.
So the next one is your pons, and your pons is cranial nerve 5, which is your teeth, your face, your mouth, all the feeling parts. Okay. So if my brain can't feel my face, do you think my face is going to grow? No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. But in a mechanical world, people look, well, we have 5 deficiency, we're going to do 5. But it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't just give a cranial nerve something and it's going to change because I have networks. So if you think
Sure.
of like a Ferris wheel and you got 12 buckets, but it's more complex than that because I've got my right buckets of 12 and I've got my left buckets of 12. And so for my face to grow, for my airway to grow, for it to work, I can't be out of sync,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my
Yeah.
eyes bay me out of sync, but it's out of sync because cranial nerve 5 on the left, oh, but cranial nerve 9 on the right. That's what people don't understand.
Sure.
So if my lower airway in a mechanical sensory dimension can be cranial nerve 9, 10, 11, but again, all of that has a total different relationship if my hearing through my bone conduction is off.
Mm.
Now my timing is off between my right and left brainstem, my right and left brain. So in your world, you may see it as gait. My
Mm-hmm.
world, I could see it as tongue or lips,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're going to work on their gait. Somebody else is going to work on their tongue and lips. But all of that has to be resynced through the bone conduction.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So until
Yeah.
we get that part at the same time, we're working with gait and breathing and this, you
Mm-hmm.
have this, you could call it neuromodulation, you could call it recalibration.
Yeah.
It is multi level,
Sure.
and you're only as strong as your weakest cranial nerve.
Yeah. And that's also a key because a lot of people talking about cranial nerves are like, just do vagus stimulation for this and vagus here and zap your vagus nerve here and here. And, you know, to me, that never really like, I understand it. It can be beneficial. But what you're saying is this is a process together and there's so many different dimensions of how these things work together. And so the work that you do is a coordination and integration of all of those and properly testing them so that you can properly treat them effectively, which is very brilliant.
Well,
Um,
what's fun is the retest. Okay.
yeah.
Because if cranial nerves fire 100 million billion times a millisecond, they
Mm-hmm.
can change in 1
Mm-hmm.
second. But
Yeah.
here's the biggest message for the person who's tried everything.
Mm.
They lack hope.
Yeah.
We all love it when we do one thing and the human changes, right? We all love that.
Sure.
Humans are more complex than that. But when we integrate these systems, they can change within 2 hours. Yeah. If you've had a problem for a while, it could take 2 hours to get all these little parts to talk to the right thing. And what I say to people, which is the best analogy I have, you
Mm-hmm.
came into me and you have AOL dial up and you had a car accident 20 years ago. Do you think it could take 2 hours, maybe 6 hours, to update everything you haven't updated on your computer for the last 20
Yeah.
years? Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Yes. Do you see? So
Yes.
to get the camera to work with the keyboard, to get to work with Zoom, to get right, we have to update each little system. But
Yeah.
you have the power of your cranial nerve system behind you. The potential, if I measure that battery, it's there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just
Mm-hmm.
not connected to the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Why we
Yeah.
have hope, nothing but hope. I can't tell you the
Yeah.
day, but I can tell you Q-tips are magical. There is a magic wand in the world, and it is Q-tips.
Awesome. Yes, there is always hope for anyone listening. There's always hope. Never stop searching. There's always hope. And, you explain this and more in your book, Winning at the Game of Health. I'm sure you go into a lot more about that so people can get your book and learn more about that.
It's a baby concept of cranial nerves. It's in my
Sure.
introduction because it's
Sure.
like the big book on cranial nerves is so big that like no one's going to
Sure.
read it. So I've
No.
been working on that for about 6 years trying to go, okay, how could we make it narrower or whatever? And that's why I teach a year-long program. Once a year it
Yeah.
starts, I think in February of 25, and then I have an
Mhm.
intro program next year. I mean, excuse me, next month in November of this year
Okay.
is just an intro. You get a little bit so that you go home
Mhm.
and do a little bit because you don't want to get upset to where, oh, I have to learn 37 things. Yes, but you can start with a little bit if you already have a bigger picture clientele. And
Sure.
actually, a lot of patients that are clients that are parents learn for themselves first and then their child. You can't experiment on a child. You yourself
Mm,
have to learn this so that you can feel the implications. Because we're unique, we could touch your tongue with a Q-tip and get all of a sudden your throat opens. Somebody else, they touch their tongue and they can see better. Is
mhm.
that? Because your networks are individual.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And that's all on your year program you're talking about? Okay. Is and that's for anyone. Anyone can go and purchase your year program. That's not, like, for providers or anything?
Anyone can, but they have to, you got to work, you got to
Sure.
practice, and you have to be
Sure.
nice. If you're not nice, you can't take my program because when you dance with the brainstem, you have to be respectful, you have to be
Mm.
kind, but you have to be unyielding.
Mm,
Help
mhm.
somebody breathe. You don't give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Important. Well, amazing. I will put all of those links in the bio of this podcast so people can find you if they want to, work with you one on one or with that program that will be accessible to them. Thank you so much for your time. I think we just kind of scratched the surface, but I know that it was important, and so I thank you again for taking the time and doing what you do and being such an excellent communicator and teacher. And you could just go on. You can, if anyone listens, you can tell her passion and what she has accomplished in this. So we thank you for doing that and continuing on despite things I'm sure you've gone through, so that you can help more people. Uh,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, yeah, it's all worth it. We all get to be a blessing to bless others. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone who listened to this episode. Do you have any last things of where they should find you? You wanna hit your website one more
Sure,
time?
it's restoring breathing. So it's the action of restoring breathing. And in our today culture, we could restore it every day. And when you do it, it's kind of like brushing your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
The more you
Amazing.
participate in your health and wellness, you are going to benefit.
Yes. Amen. All right. Well, everyone, thank you again, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks.
Take care.